Hello!
Hi.
Hello.
We read Peter Pan. This is Bookish Thoughts and Feelings.
Yep,
I'm Bridget.
I'm Sam.
I'm Peter Pan. No, I'm not Peter Pan, but my name is Peter.
Very easy to remember this one. Um, would we like to start off? And Molly should be joining us soon.
Yes, you should.
Yes.
This is her favorite book. So, um, do you want to start off with general thoughts about this? I'm gonna put it back here.
All right, who wants to go first?
I will. I finished this like Saturday, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun to read and stuff, and my book has pictures, so I was able to look at those, which was really nice. And I don't know, I thought it was really interesting. Like you always sort of know about Peter Pan, but to actually read the story and hear about it, I felt like it gave me a different perspective on what I hadn't read before, but like I heard all about. So I thought it was good. I didn't really rate anything this year, so I don't have a rating for it. I might make a whatchamacallit review sometime in the future,
Mm, yeah.
nearish future for
Yeah,
it.
it took me a while to figure out what to give this in terms of rating. I settled on 3 stars. I like always give things three
You do,
stars. Um,
except for
but
probably Lord of the Rings.
what? Well,
Lord of
yeah.
the Rings.
I mean, no, everything like the majority of what I rate, I give 3 stars, except for like things that I really liked and things that I really didn't like. Um,
Mhm.
But yeah, this also had illustrations. They were terrible illustrations, in my opinion. And this edition is just terrible. Like the pages are like cut off wrong. I need to get a better one. Um, yeah.
How much
But
was your edition?
what?
How much was your edition?
Oh, it was, I don't know. It was crazy cheap. But it's like the Signet Classics paperback. It was like a mass market paperback or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah.
you know, I, same as you, I've like heard about Peter Pan and all this stuff. I have like no recollection of the movie.
Did
The
people
cartoon.
make fun of
But
you? Peter
what?
Pan?
What?
Did people call you Peter Pan?
Maybe like once or twice. Uh, but and it's strange because I've like never read this before, but reading it made me feel really nostalgic. You know,
Hmm.
because it's just one of those classic things. Um, Uh, and I'll get into my thoughts a bit later once we're getting deeper into what we thought. But yeah, I
Hmm.
thought it was a very very good story. I can definitely see why it is Molly's favorite book. It is not my favorite book,
Hmm.
but I can definitely see why someone would consider it their favorite.
Oh, hold on. Before you say anything, Sam, you see links in the bottom right-hand corner? Do you not have that
Links?
I don't.
in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, the live show screen?
Yeah, are you talking about the question tab
Oh, wait.
No,
or in like the?
in the Google Plus thing.
No, I only see us in the bottom right hand corner.
Yeah,
No, it's
same.
below that.
I think only you have that.
Okay. How did you find the link to join and everything?
I went into Google Plus and it said I had an invitation.
Right.
Okay. Sorry, Molly just doesn't know how to get on. Okay, continue.
Okay, well, I really like this book. I actually started it on Saturday instead of finishing it, and
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm kind of like it's one of those points right now where I'm in the middle of like several different books, and it was nice to have something that was just really light and easy to finish really quickly. But yeah, it did give me that nostalgic feeling for when you're really young. And I also, I think, saw the movie, but it was too long ago to really remember anything, so it was kind of like a fresh new story for me.
I don't think I saw the movie. I might have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those like I can't even remember if I've seen the whole thing from start to finish because I only remember like maybe a couple shots here and there.
Yeah.
Um, oh, and I will say I like it's much more like whimsical than I expected it to be, you
Hmm.
know.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a
It was
very
also more violent than I expected to be.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, well, I mean, there's like the Child Thief that's based on Peter Pan, right?
Yeah, I think I've seen that.
Yeah, and I read it. Well, I didn't read the book yet, but I read like kind of the notes about it, and he said like he
What
got like these darker tones from Peter Pan, and kind of that inspired him.
the Child Thief?
Read the Child Thief, yeah.
Hmm.
Um, so I kind of knew that there would be some dark elements that younger kids might not pick up on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just it seems like we're hesitant to go like really deep in because we're waiting for Molly to
Oh,
get.
she should be kind
Okay,
of.
well,
Yeah.
reading this actually made me think a lot about Narnia because, it's also like early 1900s youth fantasy, and it just had like Narnia does have some of that whimsical factor to it, but yeah, I just saw a lot of the same kind of different, not like specific tropes, but just the general feel to it.
His writing style is similar.
Right.
Mhm.
They both J.M. Barrie and C.S. Lewis do this thing that I really like, where the narrator is like very self-aware, and he will acknowledge the reader directly, and he will acknowledge himself directly. Like in this one, when he said, "I'm going to toss a coin and decide which story to tell you,"
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a really popular writing style, but I'm very fond of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt like what you said about Narnia. I didn't really think about that, but now that I'm thinking about it, it does because like the magical world and stuff like that,
Mm.
and like you have to go somewhere to get there.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Um,
No offense to Peter Pan, but I still think I like Narnia
yeah.
better.
It's also interesting how when the children come back, they're not a second older. It's
Oh, I
a
didn't
lot
catch
of similarities. I wouldn't be surprised if C.S. Lewis got a few ideas from this.
I didn't catch that
Yeah, I mean, that just occurred to me that similarity right now.
because they're still young.
Yeah.
Because you're forever young when you're on the island.
Oh.
Oh.
Oh, she's
Oh.
What did you guys think was the most unexpected thing from reading it?
Let me think.
Oh, she's gone again. Well, the thing that I thought was the most unexpected, and you're probably gonna laugh at me for this. The dog, was her name Nana? The dog.
I was so confused about her
I
part.
didn't, yeah, because I like that's what I mean by whimsical, about how like the dog is like a person.
Yeah, I was so
Like
confused.
it's a fantasy within a fantasy, because already there's like all this fantastical stuff going on in the real world, and then they're taken into this fantastical world from an already fantastical real world. So yeah, I mean, I can't really say there was too much I didn't expect to happen because everyone kind of knows the general story. Um, yeah, something I didn't know about this book at first was that it was a play first.
Mhm.
Really. And you can see that in the way how he writes it. Like at times when it switches to present tense, it's like he's telling it as if it's a play.
Mhm. Go on.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I was reading it, and for Nana, hold on. At the beginning, I'm like, okay, so this is a person, like, she's taking care of them. But then, they, like, go put her out in the doghouse, and I'm like, wait a second, so she's a dog. But then, like, a couple pages later, it seems like she's a person again. And I'm like, what the heck? I was so confused.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
Hi, sorry, technical difficulties. My
I had
bad.
technical difficulties on my end, too. My mouse isn't working.
Nice shirt, by the way.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks. I just kept clicking join, and it was just my face, and I was like, I hope it's not just me staring at the screen broadcasting to people, because that's awkward.
Well, no, I can see your icon. You popped up a couple times, and I was like, "What are you like having trouble seeing?"
It was not working. Sorry. And then he texted me. I was like helping my sister plan her wedding, and I was like, "Oh, I gotta go. Hold on."
Yeah, Peter texted me like a half hour ago, and he was like, "You ready for the live show?" And I was like, "What?" Wait,
So out of it. I was like, I saw your text. I'm like, what is she even talking about? And I'm like, oh crap, this. All right, yeah.
Yeah, I always like to confirm, so I was like, hey, is the live show from 6 to 7 today? And then we're
I
just
was
like,
like, "Oh yeah, that's happening. I forgot."
Oh, Bridget, I love your copy. I have that copy.
Oh yeah, it's really
I've
pretty.
got this really awful copy.
Oh, I have that one too.
This
Which
one.
one do you not?
Get all the copies. Hold on, I'll just get them all. Hold on.
Yeah, I think I'm going to need a recommendation for a better copy because this one is very poorly manufactured.
I really like this one.
I like mine.
Yeah, yours is pretty nice.
It's nice, and I got it at Barnes & Noble for like, I don't know, it was cheap. It was like maybe 10.
Copies.
Which one's your favorite?
Well, yeah, I have a few favorites. I have this one, like you said. I really like this one. This is one of my favorites.
Oh,
That's pretty.
And then another one I really like is this giant one.
Ooh.
Oh, wow. That's nice,
I
yeah.
have a few more. I'll just show you all of them. I have this one.
Ooh.
I have like retellings and stuff too, but these are like ones that are just Peter Pan. This one. And then I have this one from Barnes & Noble. It's like the interactive one, which I really like because it has like pop-up stuff in it. It's like essentially a pop-up book for Peter Pan. And then I have the one Bridget has. I have another Barnes & Noble one. Another Barnes & Noble one. This one in German. This one. And this one.
So do you have Sam's copy?
What?
You have Sam's copy?
This
Which
here.
one does Sam's look like? No, I don't have that one. I would like that one.
Well,
I'm always getting them. Like, I'm always getting new copies. I literally had someone I don't even know send me an email, like from the email on my YouTube, and was like, I watched your Peter Pan videos. Here are some editions I suggest you pick up. And I was like, thank you, stranger. Next paycheck, I'll get on it.
I was like walking around the used bookstore looking for a copy of this, and it was in like the last place I looked, and it was in good condition, and it was so pretty and really cheap, and
Is that an
it just like,
acorn?
made my day so much better.
Is there an acorn on it?
Yeah, there is.
I love that. I want that one. I'm gonna look at it. I'm gonna get up and get it. Yeah, I also have like some retellings and like a copy of like the play and stuff. But yeah, these are like my
That's cool.
just the. I have a bunch of Peter Pan crap. There's so much Peter Pan stuff that I own. Did you guys like it?
I
Yeah.
liked it.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to reread it, but I'm familiar with the stories.
really?
I know a thing or two about it. Yeah, whenever someone reads Peter Pan, they're like, I didn't really like it. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, you're entitled to your incorrect opinion of the book. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I didn't quite connect with it on the level that you probably do.
Yeah.
But I can totally like see why it's your favorite, you know?
It's such an old writing style. Like,
Yeah.
even a kid's book would never be written like that today.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel about The Hobbit. It's like my favorite book by far, and I have like multiple copies of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I get that.
I always just like the way that it's like, it doesn't feel like a book. It feels like it's literally like J.M. Barrie's like J.M. Barrie acknowledges himself as the author. He's like,
Yeah.
that's the story
Yeah,
that
I
I'm
mentioned that earlier. Yeah.
And I wish kids' books were more like this now, because I do think it's dumb that kids' books are so, like, I've been in the bookstore and I've seen, like, junior novelized versions of Peter Pan where it's, like, the kid, and I'm like, that was a kid's book. Like, you don't have to make it more kid-y.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, if there's anything, like, inappropriate in there for children to read, like,
It's because their brains aren't sophisticated enough now.
yeah, talk down to kids, write down to kids, so.
Yeah.
So what is your guys' favorite characters?
I liked Wendy a lot because she had like a lot of sort of, I don't know, we got to see a lot of her.
Love
And
one.
I felt like seeing her character sort of grow and like try and keep reminding her brothers about like their parents and just sort of trying to get them to remember, and then realizing that they should go back and everything because she couldn't even remember that.
Yeah.
And them actually going back. But like what annoyed me was like he sort of acknowledged it in the book too, is that like they didn't get punished at all for their actions, which they sort of should have because
I always wondered. I think it was just like their parents were so relieved because like
yeah.
it comes across more in the movie. I think that they're gone for a really long time.
Yeah.
Like in Disney, they're gone for like a day or two, but they were gone for like weeks. Like I think at that point, the parents were just like convinced their kids were dead, that they were like happy they were even back. That's probably like if I was a parent and my kid had literally been gone like weeks, I would. And if they came back, I'd be like, "That's fine, whatever, you're here." Like,
Yeah.
Who are your favorite characters, you guys?
what about you guys?
Like flipping through, trying to. I did really like Wendy. I thought she was a good protagonist.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting to see, and it's nice to see such a strong female protagonist in something that was written.
And she's so young. She's like
Yeah.
not 13. Like they say that like in the movie too. She's like barely 13. Like I mean that was considered much older back then. Like that would be the equivalent of like you're almost 18 now, but like, still that's still really young.
Yeah.
And I like that she like wanted to take care of them and stuff, like a mother. It's sort of like playing pretend and everything like that, which is like what kids do when they're little.
What do you guys think though of like the whole because like Peter mentions it in passing in the book, like they talk more about it in like the short story Peter and Kensington Gardens. Like he says that he's like, oh, I ran away when I was a day old, and then I came back, and there was another baby in my place, and that's why he's like, oh, well, like he's mad that Wendy's mother left the window open waiting for her. Like, what do you think then about Peter's like weird mother complex that he's like kind of attracted to Wendy, but he still like pretends she's his mom, but he hates in general. Like it's really weird and creepy. Like I feel like Freud would like love Peter Pan if you think about it, because it's so weird. He like hates mothers on principle, and like probably then therefore like hates women, and then this is the first like woman he's actually like ever had an interaction with.
Yeah, it's very
It's really, and they're like 12. That's why
I know.
I feel like at the time, like it was normal for like to think about your 12-year-olds like marrying and stuff, but like nowadays we're like, ew, 12-year-olds, like calm down.
But, I mean, even then, Peter still has all of his children's teeth.
Yeah, he's
So
younger than
it's
her.
like it's like that kid I'm attracted to you kind of thing.
Yeah, I always like feel weird when I watch the movie and like they have very attractive children playing the characters, and I'm like 22 years old, like watching those attractive. Like I know that actor's not 12 now, but like when I'm watching the movie, he's like 12 years old, and I'm literally twice his age. Like stop, like this is weird. I'm uncomfortable. I mean, I think that's part of the point though, is you are supposed to be uncomfortable. Because it's that whole thing of like, oh, kids grow up, learn to be adults, and then they go somewhere where they're innately not supposed to grow up, and then they're doing really weird grown-up things, like being intimate with each other.
It's I think you a double take at when you read it the first time.
Because Barry, I didn't pick up on it the first few times I read it, because Barry will, like, he has, like, those sentences where he just kind of, like, says something in passing.
Yeah.
And when Peter's first there, like, they don't really show it in any of the movies, but he's like, yeah, they were, like, sitting in that rocking chair together for hours.
Yeah.
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 That sounds so innocent. Okay.
And I think I'm like gonna wait maybe a year and then reread this.
Yeah, every time I read it, I'm like, damn, these kids are like, they're carried on, and they're like 12. And
Yeah.
Well, sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I just read Romeo and Juliet for school too.
Yeah.
It's like they're like 14. Like she's not even 14.
Well,
Yeah,
it's arguable that Romeo and Juliet is a satire.
So it's like
I hope it is. No, I've heard that argument, and I really hope it
Because
is.
I mean, he based it off of another poem, and it was like the poem compared to Romeo and Juliet is terribly written, and he was probably making fun of it. He was probably making fun of the whole concept of these two people falling in love after like 2 weeks of knowing each other and then committing suicide.
not even. It's like 3 days.
It's
Well,
not.
in his version, it's 3 days. He shortened it.
Yeah, they meet at a party, and then they're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Like that's the thing too. Is like that would never happen nowadays. Like you literally couldn't take that plot and make it work now because like the whole miscommunication that she's not really dead. Like just send a text.
I mean, West Side Story.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, like we get to 2016, that's not gonna work. Like we have High School Musical.
Yeah, she's not dead.
Like,
that's all.
But does Neverland have Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
Like, shoot her mom a text being like, no, I'm like in a star right now.
I always wonder about every time I read it, because it is a kid's book, so it's not like this richly developed world, like it's very on the surface world. Is every time I read it or watch the movie or any of the movies or anything, is I'm like, is that the only island? Like, where was Hook before? Whenever they're like, oh, we set sail at dawn, I'm like, to where? Where are you going back to?
Like,
I don't understand.
Yeah, like in Narnia, we were talking about similarities between this and Narnia earlier, and how like in the prequel that C.S. Lewis wrote, it was
there's other
places like that wood where they have all the different pools, and like
that's what I always whenever I write stories about Peter Pan, I always like to think about, like, because, I mean, my favorite character is Hook because he's, like, the least developed character and it's, like, arguably one of the most important, and you don't know anything. You're like, why is this grown man there? Why is he so angry?
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Where are the pirates going? Because, like, you can't just be hanging out there all the time, and, like, if you look at it from, like, a, like, kind of crude perspective, like, these are grown men. Like, these are grown men, and they're just hanging around this island full of, like, children and islanders. Like, it's, yeah.
Well, also, since it's like an imaginary island, like people have thought of it in their streams and everything, and they've imagined it. I feel like since pirates, like growing up, you think of pirates and you're like, yeah, and like you think of them. So I think maybe that like comes into like subconscious, and then like dream about it, it has to be there.
The island is literally just everything that every kid ever imagines, like fairy.
Yeah, so it could have created it.
That is terrifying.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, every kid has their own Neverland, and every kid thinks about Neverland, and when they all get there, they're all like, oh, look, that's that one specific thing I imagine Neverland having. But it makes you think, like, yeah, how did Neverland come to be? That would be a great prequel. Someone should write that. How the hell did Neverland do it? Like,
Right, yeah.
and are there other islands, like with Narnia? Like, are there other places? Like, not even islands, just other places. Because it's like, where does that sea lead? Nowhere? I don't understand. Like,
Yeah. But one thing, what I'll say about Captain Hook. Oh.
Am I frozen?
Oh, your thing is like pinging. It's
Yeah,
not on your face. But about Captain Hook, he's probably one of my favorite characters. Because I read the afterword in this version, and it says there are like a couple things that imply that J.M. Barrie based Captain Hook off of himself.
oh yeah, I read biography.
I can't remember their last name, but he was like friends with this family, and so how he may have wanted like what's her name to be his mother, and how he had gotten like he had paralyzed his right hand from writing or something.
Yeah, he had
right hand.
what's it called? Like carpal tunnel, because you had to write everything. Like he was writing before there was even typewriters. Like,
yeah. And Hook doesn't have a right hand, and then also the time metaphor. You know, so I feel like the pirates are just like metaphors. You know.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Growing up and stuff like that.
When they did this, because it was a play first, and so when they did this production, and now when they do any movie of it, well, if they do it correctly, not everyone does. When they do it in the 2003 version, and whenever they do a play, is the same person who plays Mr. Darling plays Captain Hook.
Yeah.
And never, like, no one has ever officially said why they do that. They just do because, like, J.M. Barrie was like, I want the same person doing it, and so, like, people always, like, take into interpretation why do they do that, and I think it's supposed to be, like, that's what Mr. Darling was on his way to become, was a very hateful.
He's talking about, like, his numbers and stocks and that whole thing, and then Hook is, you know...
like, they just have such a hatred of... It's because, like, they see... Because, you know, it's alluded to that Mr. Darling didn't have a happy childhood because he grew up poor, and now his family's poor. And, like, you don't know what happened with Hook, but obviously he didn't have a good childhood because...
Yeah, if he's stealing things.
So, like, he sees Peter, and Mr. Darling sees his children. It's, like, what they couldn't have, so, like, how dare they have it if I couldn't? And I always thought it's, like, if, in, like, a weird way, like, if it wasn't for Peter Pan stealing the children... Mr. Darling would have become Hook. He never would have learned to appreciate his family or loving that. I always cry in the movie. Have you all seen the 2003 movie?
I saw it once.
I don't think so.
It's so good. It's the most accurate to the book, and like they add a few things just to make it like a bigger like movie experience.
Yeah.
But like when they come back at the end, Jason Isaacs plays Captain Hook and Mr. Darlings. He plays Lucius Malfoy in the Harry Potter movie.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that is good.
he's such a good Captain Hook, and he's so good too because he's Mr. Darling in the beginning, and he does it perfectly. He's very awkward and uptight, and like they show him like trying to like make small talk with people at the bank, and it's painful because he's so awkward. And then and then he turns around, and he's Captain Hook, and he's like really like oddly sexy and like creepy. Because that's the thing too, is Captain Hook's not that old. That's why it's weird when they like have really old people like Christopher Walken do it, because he's not that old. He's just older than them. They're 12, so he's like in his 30s. Like he's not much older than me if you think about it. Like I'm 22. Captain Hook's like less than 10 years older than me, and they're like he's so old. Like.
Yeah, he is often portrayed as being very old, and yeah.
But if you look at the illustrations, he's never actually that old. He's because like an old person couldn't be a pirate. Like you would have died. Like.
True.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that.
Yeah, that's what's interesting is I always thought he was much older too until I saw the 2003 version and they had like young Jason, because Jason Isaacs was younger when they made this because this was like over 10 years ago, and they had like a young like alluring Captain Hook, and I thought like that's an interesting way to do it. And I was like 10 when it came out and I saw it, so I wasn't making like deep thoughts about it. I was just like, this is fun. And then when I watch it, it's like, oh, he isn't supposed to be that old. Like he's just like older than them.
Yeah.
And when you're like, 10 and 12, like I remember being 12 and I thought like people my age now were like so old, and I'm 22 now and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like,
Yeah.
like my bills come and I'm like, what do I do? And when I was a kid, I was like, man, to be that old, like.
Yeah, like to be a teenager and like have it together.
Yeah, like
Right.
High schoolers are so old, and then when you're a freshman, you're like seniors in high school are so old. And, like every time you get there, you're like, what? I'm not like mature. What am I doing? Like.
Unless you have an older sister who's in college.
Yeah.
Then I think you have a perspective. My sister's a freshman.
Yeah, my sister, so I always
have that perspective. But anyway, yeah. So I feel like a lot of stuff that's sort of underdeveloped in this is because it's metaphorical of something, or just because it's a children's story and he didn't want to waste anyone's time. But
that's what makes it so interesting. Is so much of it isn't explained. Is that it's almost delivered like this is facts we should all already know. Like that's what's fun. Is that Jamberry's like, well, of course you know what Neverland is, and Hook.
Of course you know who Peter Pan is. Yeah.
Let's get on with the story. Like, of course you know, and you're like, no, I don't know. Who the hell is?
But I think that's great. I think that's like the best way to do it, because you're setting up rules in this secondary world that make it convincing.
It's such an interesting way of like, it's almost like anti-world building, because he doesn't explain how this world really works or how it got there or what the rules are once you're there. He always just presents them like you already knew. Like you already knew that's how, like everyone came into this story with like some extensive knowledge.
Well, yeah, it's like, the kids gathering around saying, tell us the story about Peter Pan.
Yeah, can you imagine what it must have been like to be like the first people in the audience seeing this play? My God, this is weird.
Yeah, and the first people to be like, wait, so are we supposed to clap now with the fairy thing? Right?
Like, it was the 1800s when this story first got told on a stage, and people were like, what the hell is this? You guys want to hear, like, I know, like, a lot of, like, little facts about it, and I saw this documentary about J.M. Barrie, and he'd, like, said, like, this was the story he, like, knew his whole life he was supposed to write, and he was always trying to write it, and he, like, didn't get it. He told, like, many versions of it until he got to this version. And he said, like, the first moment in his life when he knew, oh, this is, like, I'm going to write a story about the tragedy of youth and, like, the tragedy of adulthood, like, in the transition, is when he was, like, 8 years old. His older brother fell into the ice and drowned, and, like, he tried to save him, and he couldn't, and his mother was, like, so sad. She was, like, bedridden for a year, and he came to her, and he said, I'll take his place. I'll be the older brother now. Like, I'll be the man of the house. And she said, like, and they quoted, because it was, like, one of his, like, great-granddaughters said this. She was like, yeah, and then his mother said, but you'll grow up and leave me, and he'll be a little boy forever.
Yeah.
He was dead. And he said, like, in that moment in his childhood, he's like, I need to write something about, like, the tragedy of youth. And I was like, that's insane. Like, your whole life you knew you had to write this, and now it's, like, one of the best-known stories of all time.
Yeah.
Like, that's heavy stuff right there. And to be, like, a little kid And like that, I guess, is why they're so young in the book, is because he was so young when that happened.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I could go into like, Tolkien's Silmarillion and all that, but I'm not going to because this isn't about that. But
I'll
yeah,
be
like
right
there's a lot
back.
of that stuff where like these authors from a young age just like know that there's this story out there that they need to put down,
Mm-hmm.
and just they spend like the rest of their lives until they've done it, just
I enjoy
devoting
that
to
feeling,
it.
but I don't. Like, I wish I just woke up every day and was like, it's out there. Like,
Yeah.
like, I have lots of ideas, but I've never been like, that's the one.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think of like it showing up in like other parts of like stories now, like elements of Peter Pan showing up in other stories?
I mean, I think after a while that is bound to happen because once something of high quality has been out there for the amount of time that this has been out there. I mean, at this point, is this public domain?
I no, it's the
The-
property of the Children's Hospital in London because he gave them the rights. And so it's kind of public domain because, like, if you want to make something regarding it, you go through them, but they're pretty much always like, yeah, do it, go ahead. Like, they're like,
Yeah, yeah. I remember you read a chapter of it, right?
yeah, it was almost public domain at one point because
Oh,
nothing new enough. Oh, Bridget's gone.
yeah. I just got a text from her. She said, "I'll be back. I'm trying to restart my computer." So that is what is going on. But you
But
seem to know what you're doing, Molly. So I think we're okay.
yeah, now it's time for Bridget. It was almost public domain in like 2005 because no one had made anything like new to renew it. So they had a contest for like someone to write a sequel that would be like the official sequel to Peter Pan, and then that would renew it. And so they did, which I've read. It's called Peter Pan and Scarlet, and it's written by this woman, and it was written in 2005, not the
Wow.
but it sounds exactly like Jane Barry wrote it. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
that's
You guys should read it because it's like they go back to Neverland, and it's just as like creepy and tragic as the first one, which is nice.
yeah, yeah. This was very true.
They didn't write like some weird happy ending where they were like, never mind, everything's fine.
Yeah, so it sounds very true to the original concept. But yeah, like when something like this has been out there for that amount of time, I think it's just bound to become part of a culture. So yeah.
What do you think, Sam?
I think, well, yeah, there are a lot of things that I was reading, like the things with time and how time doesn't pass. Like, I think, oh, that's like this thing. Well, no, that was like this, like, it's easy to forget that it came so early. Like, it feels a lot like, not that it's, like we said, it's different from what there is now for children, but there are so many common elements that came from stuff like this that we have now.
Well, like, you think about it, all the children's fiction from like that era of like the late 1800s to the early 1900s, like The Secret Garden or Treasure Island or Wizard of Oz or Alice in Wonderland, they were all like escapism stories about children not liking like the strict rules of British or early American society and going to some place that was essentially made up of like a cumulative children's imagination, like a place that didn't make sense on principle, like Wonderland, like that nothing about that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Every time I read it, I'm like, what's going on? I still don't know.
Yeah.
And that's what we gave kids. Like, I think that's cool. I wish we still wrote stuff like that. I think it's dumb now that kids' stories are like
Yeah.
things. Because
Yeah.
it's not like they're having
We
sex
need
in
to write
books
them.
or anything. Like they can read it. It's fine. Like
Okay, circling back a bit, like, Peter reminded me of this. I didn't think of it when we were talking about how, like, Peter had this weird relationship with Wendy. Can we talk about how the pirates said, I think, that they were going to take Wendy and she was going to be their mother? Because thinking about how they were older than, like, these kids, and that just makes it so much more...
it's so uncomfortable. If you watch the 2003 movie, there's literally like a scene where Wendy goes to like the pirates like try to have like a meeting with Wendy to like convince her to come be like their storyteller and their mother. And she's really like having dinner with Captain Hook, and he's like straight up flirting with her, and she starts like straight up flirting back like the way an awkward 12-year-old can. And then she like goes back to the Lost Boys. She's like, Captain Hook is a man of like great intelligence, and I'm like, and it's so weird because you're like, you're 12 and he's like 13.
Yeah, that is wow.
see it when you're a kid and you watch the movie, but like when I went back and watched it, like when in like college, I was like, oh, I haven't watched this movie in a while, and I watched it, and I was like, that scene made me so uncomfortable because Captain Hook is just this grown man straight up trying to flirt with this 12-year-old girl and be like, come live on our ship, and it's like, no, like it was weird enough when she was with another child. That's a good point, Sam. That's a great point.
Yeah.
There's a lot of just weird men and their like and women relationships in the story. Because like Wendy's like the only woman you really see. The only other woman you see is her. I mean, you see Tinkerbell and Tiger Lily, but
Speaking of Tinkerbell, I really like her attitude.
Yeah.
And how she always swears at everyone.
I can't stand her. She's so like, oh, the whole ending is like her fault. Like every time I read
I
it,
know, but it's
every time I read it, I'm like, such poor choices, Tinkerbell.
Well, because the thing is, like Fairy's always portrayed as being like very noble and sweet and innocent. They can't do a single bad thing, and then Tinkerbell's just like just so done with everything.
But she can only have like one emotion at a time, and it's usually jealousy or anger.
And I think that's interesting because, like, you see, like, the Disney.
Oh, and she's a
and
sweetheart.
it's like, nah.
Like,
Which I think is great.
they have like that Pixie Hollow spin-off thing where it's like
Yeah.
she's so kind.
Yeah, all of a sudden she's so sweet. Like when,
It's like, where did they get that from?
Because she's not like that in the original Disney cartoon either. Like, she's still mean in that. And then, like, Disney nowadays was like, we gotta fix it. We gotta make it.
if Jay and Barry were like here today and we're like watching that, he'd be like, dude, what are you doing?
Or, like, don't they have some show on, like, Disney Kids called, like, Jake and the Neverland Pirates?
I think.
Oh, yeah.
I have no idea what that is, but I've seen pictures when I try to, like, look up Captain Hook merchandise on, like, Etsy or something. It'll be, like, actual Captain Hook, and then it'll be, like, whatever the hell that show is. And I just, like, just from pictures, I'm like, no, what is that? That's wrong. Like, that doesn't belong in this franchise.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's just kind of what happens over time.
It's so
Something
long,
really
yeah.
popular that has become part of a culture. It's just, it gets stretched out and it gets
Watered down. One of the, like, biggest elements in Peter Pan, and, like, Peter Pan obviously wasn't, like, the first story to do it, is, like, the story where it's, like, a child has an adult nemesis. I don't know, has anyone heard of a book called Harry Potter?
Right, yeah.
Like, and the fact that he's the boy who lived, and, like, Peter Pan is, like, all children grow up except one. No, I always see, like, the two biggest places I see Peter Pan stuff is in Harry Potter and Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amy Pond. That is, like, the most Wendy Peter Pan, like, thing I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, you might kind of hate me for this. I have not seen a single episode between, like, Series 3 and Series 8.
Like, no. You're just all in the middle. You're like, no.
Yeah, because, like, the only ones I really watch are the old ones and the new ones with Peter Capaldi. Like,
I have not seen any of this recent season. I keep, like, meaning to. And then
the first couple of episodes of it I wasn't crazy about, but the latter ones are pretty good, but it's that same kind of Stephen Moffat.
Finally, and I cried, like, all the tears. Like, she's my everything. I love her.
I've seen like series 9 through, or no,
Well, we're
next
in
Doctor.
Series 9 just happened.
New Who series 1 through 4, I think, and I've seen like 2 episodes with River Song, and she's
everything.
one of my favorites.
She's my favorite
Who are
female.
we talking about again, Clara?
River
No.
Song.
River?
Yeah, like,
Yeah, she's great.
I mean, like, all the women on Doctor Who are great. Like, I've never, like, oh, you suck. But, like, she is one of my...
Except for Joe Grant in the 70s. She
Or
has,
Martha.
like, no dignity.
Let's be real. Martha's annoying.
Yeah, but I'm
Why
also...
does the doctor want to date me? It's like, why is that your only priority? Like, you're literally time traveling. Like, is that not cool enough for you? Like...
Yeah, and one character in the 70s, her name was Joe Grant. She was, like, the most annoying, like, helpless...
Oh, but you know what? I think I've seen, like, Tumblr stuff about, because I haven't watched, like, most of the old ones. I've only seen a few.
Yeah. But they replaced her with Sarah Jane, and it was much better after that.
Yeah.
And she's, like, the best character ever. But anyway.
Getting off track.
Yeah.
I was really upset with the new season until the end. I was like, okay, we're bringing it back. We're
Doesn't
bringing
the
it back around.
girl from Game of Thrones come in as a companion, like the girl who plays Arya on Game of
Arya
Thrones?
Stark, yeah, Maisie Williams. I've seen like gift sets of her in it.
I don't know. I liked it, but I didn't.
Yeah, the ones with her I found like really disturbing, like psychologically.
I just really am waiting for the day that the Doctor is not a white guy. Like, I just really want, like,
Yeah.
it literally anyone else. Like, and I'm not even, like, on that train where I'm like, oh, it has to be a woman, because I'm like, I don't care. It doesn't have to be a woman. It's not like there's no women on the show.
Mhm.
But, I mean, like, literally, like, even if he was just black or, like, Hispanic or, like, anything but white, but he's always white. You know?
Yeah.
It's 20
Unfortunately, that's just like the tradition with it. I think. I mean, if
Master turned into a woman, so I think the Doctor.
well, yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Here's the thing.
True.
I think I don't know. Was the first guy who played the Master like part Hispanic? I think he was. I
He
mean,
looks very white.
Roger Delgado. But
Weird.
Let me go look him up.
He looks so white. Like.
yeah. But yeah. The thing is, there's an argument that like the Doctor should always stay a white male, but the Master can be like whatever.
I don't know. Maybe we should at least make him a ginger then.
Yeah.
I don't know why I didn't wear this sooner.
Well, his father was Spanish. I'm Googling. Oh. Okay, we're off track. We're talking about Peter Pan.
Yeah, we're like the Doctor Who live show out of nowhere.
That will happen at a later date.
Yeah, and I think it's already happened a couple times. Like
Magnus Chase.
watches we've done.
I won't tie anything back to like Doctor Who. I'll be like, you know what? This is just like season 5, episode 3.
Yeah.
And like everyone around me is like, no one knows what you're talking about.
Okay, so favorite scene. Go.
My favorite scene's always when Peter first. It's always when Peter first shows up, and talks to her, and then, my other favorite is like, the second to last chapter of the book was the original last chapter, where like, he leaves and he's like, he never saw her again, and then they told him like that was too sad and he had to write another chapter. But like the original last
really
line,
sad.
It's like Harry Potter. You need to write another book.
because like in the movie that's where it ends with like he was looking in on the one joy from which he must be forever barred. I like that full, and I think it makes more sense to end there because I like that full circle of like when he first meets Wendy and when he asks to leave her. Because I always believed that like as smart and level-headed as she was, if he had just said he loved her back, that she would have stayed. Like I think that's how much she loved him. That if he had like just been kind to her, but I don't think he loved her back because I don't think he's capable of that.
Yeah, and I mean, and Jan Berry says, many times that like, children's hearts are very,
Yeah.
hollow. I don't remember how he described it, but.
I can't remember if they say it in the book, but I know Captain Hook says it in the movie, and I've always loved it. He says, no, he cannot love. It is part of the riddle of his being. And I can never remember because I read the book in like
Yeah, that's like really eloquent. I hope it's in the book.
I don't think it's like that exact phrase in the book, but Captain Hook does say it to Wendy in so many ways, or to someone like, oh yeah, he can't love. But in the movie they say it's part of the riddle of his being, and I think it is kind of like that whole, no one loved him when he was like technically a kid for the first time, and so even though he didn't grow up, he still became bitter, just like in a different manner than the like grown up did.
Well, also, I think that since, like, they're kids, and since he's so young, and he's supposed to be so young, that you don't really know when you're that young. And since his parents sort of, like, left him, you could say, or he left him, however you want to say it, like, he never got that, like, parental bond, really.
Like,
that sort of shows you the first time.
Yeah, like Wendy's grown up witnessing her parents, who, like, as uptight as they are very much in love, which is made clear in the beginning. Like, they're very much in love. So she has this nice example of what a healthy, mature adult relationship looks like, and she's being raised in a culture where they're telling her, like, you're a woman, soon you will take these steps. And so I think it makes sense that she knows right away at a young age that she loves him. But again, like, he's so many paradoxes. Like, how could he know what real love was? Like, how could he, like, even recognize it? But yeah, what about you guys? What are your favorite scenes?
I like the part where they're first going it's not really a scene. It's just like the setup for the routine that kind of forms. It made me think a lot of like I used to really love the Boxcar Children when I was like 7, 8, 9, and it made me think a lot of like the resourcefulness that just made me feel kind of nostalgic for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, my favorite part was probably when he first came and they got his shadow, and then, like, what was it, they, like, rolled it up. I was so confused for the first, like, maybe 20-something
Talk
pages.
about it like it's normal.
Yeah, because and what I said at the beginning of this live show was, like, it's a fantasy set in, like, a fantastical world that's the normal world.
It's like magical realism. Like they've
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
fact that mom came downstairs and was just like, yeah, this strange kid who flies around, I got his shadow. Like, what do we do with it? And Dad's like, well, we're not
Yeah. Or,
Why?
like, or how, like,
It's the wash. We can't
Yeah.
have that. Like
yeah,
that's
how Nan and the dog has, like, human characteristics
and no one thinks it's weird. They're
and
just
seemingly
no, it's
opposable.
our nurse. Like, whatevs.
Yeah.
And that, like, the shadow, like, she's just like, I'll just sew it back on, you know?
Yeah.
Like, the
Uh,
fact that the shadow has its own mind and like no one thinks that, and the fact that Wendy doesn't think that's weird. Like she wakes up and is like, "Oh, you're in a predicament here. Let me help you out." Like,
I'll
what
just
the
grab
hell?
my sewing kit.
Because I know if
honest,
I wake up tonight and there's some flying kid in there who's like, my shadow fell off, I'm calling like 911. Like I'm not like, oh, let me help you out.
well, here's the thing. To be honest, like, I think because it's, like, so often it's just like, what? No, that can't be real. You know, the first thing I would either think is either I'm hallucinating or this is, like, totally legit and I just need to stay calm right now.
I guess for that matter, you could argue how much of like that scene between Wendy and Peter is just both theirs imagination. Like, is his shadow really detached? But then, like, why would the parents see it too? You know, like that's the whole thing with the book is like, is that really happening? How could it not be happening? The parents are acknowledging it too.
Yeah.
Bridget, what's your favorite scene?
I don't know, I like the scene where they're on the boat and Peter is like, it's hook or me, and I just have to like do this, and he's so determined to sort of finish it off because like it's like the climax sort of the whole thing.
Hook or me this time, like it's the title chapter. It's so
Yeah.
and I love how
like sort of repeated and stuff.
in the movie, like Wendy joins in and fights with them, but I always think it's funny in the book how it's like Wendy was not participating in like
Yeah.
this behavior. Like Wendy's above it. Like in the movie, like she picks up a sword and fights, which is cool. But in the book, she's like, "Y'all are so immature. You do your thing. I'm gonna be over here. Let me know when you're done. Like let me know."
Now, did
Children.
the no splash thing actually happen in this? Because if it did, then I just, like, glossed right over it.
The what?
Because the part when he's like, "What's that? No splash?" You know, that whole thing.
In like Disney movie, you mean?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I feel like that's, like, a really iconic part.
From Disney, yeah.
All right. Yeah. So yeah.
Wow.
When I read this, I was like, "Wait, did I, like, totally miss that? Or did it not happen?"
Well, because like in the Disney movie, the Lost Boys don't go home with her. Like they all stay with Peter. Whereas like I remember because my dad hates sad endings, and like on my like 19th or it was my 20th birthday, we were like, oh yeah, we'll watch a movie as a family. Molly can pick, and I was like, I want to watch Peter Pan because like no one else in my family had seen it. And so we're watching it, and my mom and my brother were like, yeah, I really liked this. And so at the end of the movie, when, like, Wendy's the narrator, like, adult Wendy, and she's like, but I was never, like, Peter flies off. She's like, you won't forget me, will you? And he's like, me, forget, never. And then the voice is like, but I was never to see Peter Pan again. And so I tell his story to my children. It's like that bittersweet sad. And then she's like, because all children grow up except one. And that's the end. And there's a moment of silence, and my dad's like, that's it? Like that? My dad's like, I don't like that at all. What do you do? He didn't show back up? He told her he's going to come back. I was like, Dad, that's the point. He's a horrible person. Like, how did you not get that? He sucks, Dad. Like, that's the point of this story. And my dad's like, I don't like that at all. I'd like to think he did come back. And my dad's like, that's a terrible ending. I was like,
Great.
like, way to just miss the whole thing. Like, this tragic ending. My dad's like, that's it? It's the best they could do?
Yeah,
Now,
I think,
yeah.
sorry, I think it's just like, I think it's a good ending because
It's real.
it's like, it leaves it open to interpretation too, but at the same time, you sort of know what's going to happen.
I feel like it so wouldn't fit with everything else that had happened in the story if somehow Peter and Wendy ended up happily together. Because it's like the whole point is that you do have to grow up and you can't have your childhood things for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Like, I wish I had time to climb trees and dress up in costumes and sing in my house, and I only find moderate time to do that now. I don't have nearly as much as I did before. Like,
Yeah.
now I gotta like go to my job and stuff. Like,
Yeah. And another thing is, I think, we forget that Peter Pan is like this sort of supernatural being,
yeah, like why can he fly all the time?
He's like beyond the rest of humanity. And then, during the story, you kind of get to know him better, and you feel like he's a real person. But then in the end, he's Peter Pan. He's not.
Did any of you guys see Pan? That movie that came out this past year. It was like a prequel story with like.
I didn't see it. No.
It did badly in the box office because Peter Pan movies never do well. But it was an interesting prequel story because it kind of, like, a lot of it didn't match up with, like, the entire theme of Peter Pan. Like, he's, like, an orphan in, like, the 40s or something in the beginning, and his mom left him some note that's like, I love you, I will always come back for you. And I'm like, well, all right, right off the bat, this isn't
Yeah,
correct.
unless he's a time traveler, right?
But the whole, once he gets to Neverland and is, like, interacting with the people, it's very much, like, and it is explaining why he is so ethereal compared to everyone else, like why he can fly all the time no matter what, and everything. It wasn't the best thing I ever saw. Like, I didn't leave thinking like, oh, that was the best, but like, it still went and it was Peter Pan, so I was happy. Like, I can watch the crappiest Peter Pan adaptation, like Peter Pan Live with Christopher Walken, and it can be terrible, and I'll still be like, it was okay, it's pretty good. It's Peter Pan, so I'm satisfied.
So what's your opinion on like other adaptations like Peter and the Starcatchers and the Child Thief and stuff like that?
I never was even able to finish Peter and the Starcatchers.
I haven't read it. I haven't read a lot of them.
A few chapters, and it was so painfully different that I didn't like it. And it's not different in, like, obviously retelling is going to change events and stuff. I just mean, like, it didn't fit the entire, like, point. Like, I feel like there's a story. The Child Thief, I think, like, it gets kind of slow at times. Like, honestly, I just got a little bored at times reading that book. And there's no Wendy character, which I think is ridiculous. Like, that's probably my biggest complaint is there was no there was parallels to, like, Tiger Lily and Tinkerbell, but there was no parallel to Wendy, which I thought was ridiculous because the book was originally called Peter Pan and Wendy because J.M. Barrie himself was, like, Wendy's, like, one of the most important parts of the story.
Yeah.
But I like how it addresses him as a character and what a liar he is and how he, like, lures people in. I also thought it was weird and so cool that book was, like, we're just going to throw Mist of Avalon retellings in here, too.
Yeah, I
remember reading that, and it was like, oh, the Lady of Avalon. I'm like, you walked through a mist to get here, and now you're in Avalon. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, King Arthur's just coming into play.
Yeah.
The Child Thief's not my favorite retelling either. My favorite retelling is called Second Star, and it's a modern YA retelling. But the Child Thief is definitely up there. Like, I do think it stays true to the element of who Peter is supposed to be as a character. I like all the explaining in the beginning of, like, he's this weird, like, other earthly creature. Whereas, like, I tried to read Peter and the Starcatchers, and I was like, this is dumb. And I was really annoyed, too, because the Wendy's character's name was Molly, and I, like, really wanted to get behind that. And I couldn't.
Yeah.
I watched Once Upon a Time. I tried to watch one of the episodes of Peter Pan, and they effed it up so much that I, like, couldn't sit through it. I was like, that's ridiculous. But stuff like Hook, like, I like Hook. I don't mind the Disney Peter Pan except for, like, the blatant racism scenes. I try to, like, go past them now when I watch it. For the most part, I've liked most Peter Pan retellings I've seen. There's few where it takes a lot. Like, you know, as long as there's a parallel to, like, all the female characters in it and it stays true to, like, the idea of who Peter's supposed to be as a character. Because he's not, like, this suave hero. He is, like, a really messed up, selfish person. So... But yeah, so I do like The Child Thief. I think it's really creepy.
Yeah. I have yet to read it, but I was very intrigued by the mythological aspect.
Yeah, I'd recommend The Child Thief. That was probably like the first like big. It's very dark. It's very crude. Brahm has a very crass, like just graphic way of writing that's so jarring.
Yeah. But I read the first couple of pages.
Yeah, it's like it's so polar opposite from like the eloquency of how J.M. Barrie writes.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my god, but it works because it's like essentially like Peter Pan is a horror story, and it's interesting because like, I mean that is creepy. Like someone's coming into your house and stealing your children. Like that's when you get down to the bare bones, that would make most people uncomfortable to hear about. Like,
very true. Yeah, and I also think that I liked at the end how all the boys came with her. I don't think I really expected that, but I liked how that happened.
Yeah, I
And
always liked that part.
and that the dad he didn't like they thought that he thought that they didn't like him and they gave all the respect to Mrs. Darling, but then they're like all like, yeah, we like you.
You guys all need to go watch the 2003 movie because like it's accurate and then it adds like a little bit of stuff to make it like a full-length movie. And like all these scenes you guys have named, like they're so epic to watch in the movie. Like the scene where it's Hooker Me this time, like that's a big epic pirate battle, and like when they come home, it's like really cute because like they show up and they're like, she's like, Dad, these are the Lost Boys. May I keep them? And it's like they're already poor as hell, and she's just like, can these like 8 kids move in? Like, I know we like barely have any money as it is, but like.
Yeah, I didn't think of it like that. They are really poor, and then
They're very poor. Like that's another thing too that the movie takes like the little sentences that Jane Barry like passes over. Like they're very poor. Mr. Darling is stressed about whether or not he can feed his family, and like this and this, and like Wendy has to grow up, and Wendy has to find a suitor, and like Peter might love Wendy, and this, and the pirates are like old and being creepy toward a 12-year-old girl, and the movie like straight up like gets into those scenes and like elaborates on them, and it still keeps like the weird. The movie does a really weird thing, too, where, like, the first few times I watched the movie, I didn't think they had been gone for, like, weeks, because it's because they've forgotten, like you guys said, that it just kind of seems like it hasn't been that long, and then they show their parents, and it's like, oh, damn, like, they've been gone. Like, their face has been taken off the milk carton, like, that's how long they've been out of here.
It's like in Percy Jackson, the Lotus Hotel. Yeah.
Well, because there's like 6 seasons, like the seasons come every day on Neverland. Like they're like, oh, it's noon and it's already spring. It's like a day in Maryland. That's what the weather's like here. Like I go to work and it's like 30 degrees and I come home and it's like 70 and I'm sweating. And I'm like, why do I still have to go to work if I'm in Neverland? I don't know. I'm so happy you guys read this. When Bridget texted me that, I was like, oh, we decided to read Peter Pan because of you. I was like, God. Like, I remember doing the book too, but when it was like, read somebody else's favorite book, like, I had like 3 people tweet me who were like, I'm going to read Peter Pan. I was like, I'm going to cry. Like, that's, thank you.
Yeah, I was reading this for Bridget's readathon, right? And I just happened to mention it in passing, and then Bridget was like, so why don't you nominate it? so I was like, oh, all right, fine.
Last time, we were all nominating books, and we were like, well, what should we read? And we all like were sort of unsure. Mm-hmm. And then Peter was like, Peter Pan. And I was like, why don't you nominate it? I mean, Molly really likes it.
Molly will be in the leftover.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We said we got to make sure we schedule it on a day she can do it, because that would really suck.
I always like want to do it, and like I have so much reading for school that I like never like it gets halfway through the month, and I'm like, oh my god, I didn't even read this book yet. Because like during the semester, since I am an English major, like I have so much other reading, and so Bridget was like, we do Peter Pan. I'm like, I'm familiar with the story.
I figured, I was like, you don't need to read it again.
I was trying to read it again, but it's fine. Like because it doesn't take me long to read it because it's not that long. But yeah. I was working.
You texted me, and you were like, "I'll just reread it again." And I was like, "Okay."
I was gonna try, but then I was like at work all day, so I didn't have time. I read like a few pages, but I like to read it around.
It just fine.
You know? I like to read it around Christmas. That's my favorite.
Yeah. Wasn't it like one of those Christmas plays when it was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it takes place during the winter. Like, I always associate it with Christmas. Like, I usually read it around that time of year just because it has, like, that winter. Like, the Nutcracker.
Got that atmosphere.
One of those stories where, like, kids escape somewhere. But, yeah. Yeah, and my next Peter Pan tattoo, I want to get, like, a map of Neverland on my other thigh because I have, like, a Lost Boy skull on one thigh. And my sister was like, when do you want to get that done? I was like, years from now, and I forget how much the first thigh tattoo hurt, you know, and that's gone from my memory. Then I'll go. It took like 4 hours. It was so painful. But yeah, I have 3 Peter Pan tattoos. I have my hook hand, and then I have this acorn, and then on my leg I have like a skull with a headdress, and it says never underneath it. Yeah, people who don't know Peter Pan are always like, why do you have an acorn on your arm? My Peter Pan's Duh.
You know what, though? Either way, it's a pretty cool acorn tattoo.
Yeah, I think it's
It
pretty.
is.
So, like, I wouldn't ask why you have an acorn tattoo.
My
You know,
favorites
it's a
when
cool
people
acorn tattoo.
are like, oh, what's this tattoo on your arm? I'm like, what
Yeah,
the hell?
with that one, it's like you have to be kind of.
Metaphor for life and death in China? Like, what do you mean? What is it's Captain Hook?
I think we should pick out the book that we're going to read for next.
Okay. You guys aren't going to want to read this one, but it's worth a shot. I'll be right back.
What is it?
Okay. I just wasn't sure if you wanted me to wait or not, but I really want to read The Hound of the Baskervilles by Arthur Conan Doyle. It's a Sherlock Holmes story.
Ooh.
So if you've seen the Sherlock episode about this or any other adaptation,
I saw the Wishbone episode of it back in like '95. So, I guess you guys are too young to know what Wishbone was. It was this show on PBS with like this dog named Wishbone, and he talked to the audience, but like none of the people heard him talking. And he would like go back and like reenact like famous stories, and he would be the main character, even though he was a dog. And it was the '90s, so we just accepted that as a TV show because we didn't have the internet yet. So we were just like, yeah, that makes sense. And he did The Hound of the Baskervilles, and it was ironic. He was a dog.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't read any Holmes novels, but I really like the short stories, so I've been wanting to read this one for a while.
I mean, I've seen the Sherlock episode.
Yeah, that's the only. I've seen the Sherlock episode, and I've seen like a part of. I think it was 4 parts. It was a mini-series on the BBC in the '80s, starring Tom Baker. It was his first role after Doctor Who.
I'll put in a bid. I mean, it doesn't matter, but I'll go grab it. Hold on. Like, I don't care if we read it. I'm not set on this. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. It's like a new YA release. It's called Riders by Veronica Rossi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Nah, I'm good read. Like a billion times.
About this kid who finds out he's one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Oh.
Whoa.
I never actually knew what it was about.
Because it's going to be the last month of school in April, full month, and like, I'd love to read Sherlock Holmes, but if that's what we pick, I'm not going to be in that live show.
All right.
My papers and finals are going to get the best.
All right. Yeah, maybe we'll save this one then.
Well, how long is that one?
If you do that one in the summer, I'll definitely read it because I want to read it. That's like one of the boys want to read.
Originally I was intending on reading this in the summer anyway, just because it's a bit on the denser side. Yeah.
Sam, do you have any books?
One sec, I'll be right back. I have all my to-be-read books in the other room.
But yeah, I like the idea of doing mysteries. Because
Yeah.
then it's always that talking about like, did you expect this to happen? You know that.
Yeah.
So usually whenever I get like a new Agatha Christie book, I I nominate.
Read Agatha Christie. I've like only seen the Doctor Who episodes that are like.
Oh, here's the thing. I
on the
like his
Orient.
writing more, but I like her mysteries more. They're harder to predict the ending and stuff. Because she does like the whodunits and all that, where they have the suspects and you have to.
The only big like mystery I ever read was like Gone Girl, and I remember everyone told me to read it. And they were like, "You'll never guess. Like you'll never figure it out." I figured it out like 20 pages in. I was like, "Oh, this is what it is." And then when I got to the twist, I was like, "Oh, look, I was right."
I've got 3 choices.
Oh, is one of those Me Before You?
It is.
I've been meaning to read that too. I'll vote for that. What are your other choices?
The Coral Island,
I don't know that.
R.M. Valentine, and it's like about a 15-year-old named Ralph. I'm just going to read it back. 15-year-old Ralph, mischievous young Peterkin, and clever brave Jack are shipwrecked on a coral reef with only a telescope and a broken penknife between them. At first, the island seems a paradise with its plentiful foods and wealth of natural wonders, but then a party of cannibals arrives, and after that pirate ship,
Damn, that's like
I got this when I was in Australia from my uncle. So
the Australians read. Like, what's your third book?
All the light we cannot see.
Oh my God, no.
I've already
Okay,
read.
I read that one and I recently
Oh
posted.
yeah, you didn't like it. I remember that. I forgot.
I didn't.
I mean, I'll vote for that one. But
You read it.
I
already read it too. I read it.
posted this really like jerkish video about it.
I didn't actually watch it though.
I mean, I don't dislike it. I read it for like a read along like a year and a half ago,
Mm-hmm.
and then the read along never happened. So thanks, guys. I would have read that if it was gonna be. But I mean, I'm up for Me Before You.
What's your choice, Sam?
Oh yeah. Well, we were talking about contemporaries last month because we've been doing fantasy for all the months, so I'm just gonna throw in Amy and Roger's Epic Detour because
I've read
I
that.
read both her other books and they were both
That one's good.
fantastic. So
I mean, I could still be in the Liveshow. I've read that book. Like,
is it good?
yeah, it's probably my favorite of her books. Is that one?
That's saying something.
Yeah, I love all of her books, but I think that's the best one.
Well,
I have a video, and like I think I mentioned it in like one of my story time videos how I don't have a dust jacket through that book because
maybe, but maybe it would be a better idea if we read that one if you're going to be very busy.
I mean, I'm up for that or Me Before You because I was gonna read Me Before You anyway since the movie comes out so soon. But yeah, Contemporary sounds good because
Oh
they're
yeah, the
really.
movie comes out. I forgot.
So I'm up for either one. I don't care, whichever one. But I mean, if it's Me Before You, I'll definitely read it because it's a contemporary. And that's not gonna be.
I'm actually supposed to read this for the book club for school that I've been meaning to go to. And I never read any of the books, and I forgot because I always forgot. Like
That sounds like me, but just like my classes. Like I just show up.
They never told me. Like they never tell me what the book is. And my teacher, who is like running it, she was like, "Hey, you want to come to this? Because like we don't have that many members, and I know you guys were there last year." I was like, "Yeah, but I never know the book. So if I knew the book, I would read it and come." And so she emailed me what the book was, and it was this one.
So what's it about?
It's about this woman who the movie trailer is like Daenerys Targaryen playing the girl, and it's about this woman who like I guess is out of work, and so she takes a job as like an aide for someone who's like learning to get back into life after being handicapped. He's like in a wheelchair, and then she just kind of like falls in love. They fall in love with each other, and it's about like I guess like how even if you're limited to being like in a wheelchair, like. If you meet someone kind enough, that's not really going to affect their perspective of you. And I think it's just like a love story where like one person's handicapped and the other's not. It's kind of like a finding yourself story. If you watch the trailer, it makes me cry all the tears every time. It's just a trailer. Like I watched the trailer and I'm like, oh god, the emotion.
I watched the trailer because I didn't know if it would spoil me for the book.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's pretty obvious what's going to happen in the book because I already know what the book that comes next is called. And
Oh, I didn't look at that. So that's...
Don't look at it. But Sam Claflin, who plays Finnick, is the guy.
I saw that.
Amelia Clark, who plays Daenerys Targaryen, is the girl.
Okay.
So it's already like got a bitchin' cast. But I'm up for either one. That or
See, now I'm a bit of a problem because I don't read contemporary novels.
yeah, I mean they're both love stories. Like I mean they're about other things. Like there's darker elements to both. Like I mean Roger has like she's like overcoming having been in a car accident and stuff.
Yeah.
They're still like about couples falling in love.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if Bridget's reading it anyway and you wanted to read it, I guess I'll vote for Me Before You.
Yeah, it's okay.
You should still read Amy Rogers because it's a really good one. I haven't read it since I was like 16, so it's been like 8 years, but it's still a good one. Like, but so Me Before You
And then when does the movie come out?
comes out in June 17th, I think.
Well, when it comes out, we could talk about it.
We should do that. We could have like a follow-up live show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then
Some people saw it early already and said that it's like very accurate, so
that's good.
that's good to know.
Yeah, I looked at the IMDb page. I didn't watch the trailer. I was just like, I know him, and I showed my mom. I was like, look, I'm gonna read this book.
It's gonna make me cry. I've seen just like Sasha Alsberg, like she's like tweeted pictures of her after she like finished reading it, and she's just like a weepy mess, and she's like me after. Have you seen that Sasha from Bookies? She just like was tweeting pictures while she read the book. When she finished it, it was just like her looking like someone had just like killed her cat or something. And she's like, just finished Me Before You, and I was like,
That's a very nice analogy.
like it literally looked like somebody was just like, hey, somebody ran over Fluffy, and then she like snapped a picture.
Yeah, so we'll have a follow-up live show afterwards about the movie too.
Oh, so I have to go see the movie.
Yeah, you have to go see the movie.
All right.
Gotta show out that 1313, like, or whatever movie it's
All
possible.
right, we'll see. Well, if I like the book, I'll go see the movie. If I don't like the book, I won't.
It's not required. Like, you don't
participate in that one.
We just like cancel you out. Like, yeah, you read the book, but you know we don't care.
I'll still make the thumbnail though. I'll still make the thumbnail.
Okay, thank you. That requires me doing less work. Okay. Any last thoughts about Peter Pan?
It was good. I like it because it's good.
Because it is good.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me and doing Peter Pan. It was fun. I always love talking about Peter Pan.
Yeah.
Just get my copies here.
You got that?
It's like a book haul. She's got all the books. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next month with Me Before You. Thanks for watching our live show.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.